there's hundreds of millions of years of evolution that go into making the human body move through three-dimensional space gracefully and respond to rapidly changing situations. Language, not hundreds of millions of years of evolution behind that, actually. It's pretty recent. And the same thing is true for creating images. So our idea that like creative symbolic work will be really hard to automate and the physical labor will be really easy to automate is based on social distinctions that we draw between different kinds of people, not based on a really good understanding of actually what's hard.
I don't think that doctors or like truck drivers are going to be replaced by AI like super imminently, but I could see an argument for the stock photo industry being not long lived.
My first thought was like, man, I'm really glad that my livelihood isn't tied to making album art anymore, as it once was, because I'm sitting here clicking through ideas in Midjourney and coming up with incredible album covers, one after another, And if I'm a musician now, I'm certainly not gonna like try and use my limited budget to go pay somebody to make one of these things if I can just type this in.
If 10,000 people have access to that same model, will I still be able to make something that then somebody will want to buy? Or don't they want to rather get their own account and make their own images? And why buy my art when you can just find something probably rather similar?
I'm sure like some of my artist friends are going to be so crushed because I've been trying to tell people, and right now like it looks like they still don't get how accessible this is, how this is already knocking their door. And right now, like, as an artist, it's already so hard. You have to be constantly doing new things and trying to get new gigs. So no, the world is not fair. It's not great. It's not nice. And even though like in terms of human creativity potentials and the technology and like all these fascinating ideas, I think wow, this is great. There is also this side in which is like, oh, this is so unfair.
You really have to reevaluate, okay, if anyone can do this, what's the currency now? What is the value that I bring to the table? And maybe the currency of the future is ideas. I think now I understand that like this is a future where everyone is an art director, in a sense. You might not be the artist of it, but you guided it. You conceived what it is, and that's a skill all in itself. So I don't know. I'm still working through this.
When the camera was invented and became available to an everyday consumer, I think at first people were like, oh no, portrait artists are going to be put out of business. But I think, even though DALL-E 2 might be able to generate really great pieces of artwork, I think that's like there's going to be a shift in terms of like, now that this is easy, like what can we do now?
When photography became available, painters already knew that like their job would change. Like, and not only photography, but then printing too, improving so fast. So like making paintings nowadays is inherently different from what it meant 500 years ago. Like 500 years ago, when they were making those paintings, like in the Renaissance that we love so much to think about, it's like that was the highest technology to reproduce reality. Like that was really high tech. Oil painting was groundbreaking as technology, as like this incredible material that is capable of keeping all those layers still edit, like you can still edit.
So I think it shifts our values away from being like, okay, is this like a stunning image that has like the colors that I want, to being like, is this image like really clever or really meaningful or really special in some other way? And I think that, so I think it in some ways, like maybe that's a little bit grandiose, but I do think it is like the camera in some ways, in that it will change our priorities and change what's special to us when we look at a piece of art, whether it's generated or not.
So I'm overall like pretty excited by, sort of, pressure being put from this side, and then seeing all the different like things that you couldn't even think of before being generated or created by people as a reaction against that or to that.
Now everybody can make a movie about their lives with AI. That's going to be so much fun. I think people are going to love it. And then, if you're also a great artist, maybe you're just going to do a more interesting movie.
Photography, in a lot of ways, that democratization, that opening it up to everybody, has made it perhaps less valuable in the industry ways, but a lot more valuable to our lives, a lot more valuable culturally. And it's just reshaped the landscape of it, but it's not like photography went away.
There's always going to be something new that is causing alarm, and it's never going to be the apocalyptic end of the arts that people say it's going to be. And if I thought it was going to be the end of arts, I wouldn't be a part of it.
And it's true, as in photography, that there will still be people who are good at this, like there are professional photographers, artistic photographers. This text-to-image technology, there are still artists still produce more interesting images with it, in my experience, than just sort of tech dudes who end up producing sort of glossy sci-fi looking posters that all kind of look the same. The people with an artistic background, it's texturally interesting.
Yeah, when it's going to be more widespread and used by many persons, obviously there's going to be some utilitarian shift. I think there's a lot of things that are going to serve, like, in illustration of just articles, or for like personal needs, like if you need a gift card, to send a postcard to someone, maybe you're going to do it, maybe the individual people are going to do it themselves rather than call upon a designer or an artist. But on the other hand, I mean, linguistics helps us because there's something called the zip flow. Like most people use really simple words, and like there's kind of like a curve that's this way about the mainly used expressions. So I think that there's always going to be some things, especially mediated by language and the what we could call promptcraft, the way you talk to the machine, that the public won't want to explore that much, and that individual artists will want to use.
So the computers in my sort of field of work have been slowly taken over, but with this AI stuff, it's almost cutting everything out apart from your, I don't know, just imagination, I guess. But I mean, yeah, it's sort of it does sort of take away a lot of the fun of actually doing it. So I was talking to different people, their sort of thoughts on it are, where you can kind of add your own spin on it, whether you print out these pictures and paint over them, or use it as a reference for a painting or a picture, or inspiration for something. But
the image space, the space of interesting images is getting flooded so quickly. So it is getting harder and harder to still find something that's not been done. But in the end, I also like a good challenge. So it just I have to look harder.
The only thing you can do is learn what's going on, try to get ahead of it, and try to adapt to it. And that's how I see it. You can't fight these things.
To be honest, I mean, do I know exactly what's going to happen next? No, because this is hard to predict. But I can say that my own experience, and I think the experience of a lot of people working with this, has been we suddenly learned a lot more about our history than we had known. Like, people who worked as illustrators for Disney who I'd never heard of, but their names are really powerful sort of magic words in this model. And then I start looking at their works to see why that is. And, oh, I see why. And so, no, I'm pretty sure that the effect of this will actually be to get a lot of people more interested in art history than they were, because they can now explore it kind of actively and creatively.
It's a bit unfair, of course, because some people took, I don't know, years, decades to perfect their style and find their niche. And now all it takes is to put their name in the prompt, and then you can just have the shortcut and go on from there. I hate that classic quote, but what was it? Good artists copy, great artists steal. And that's kind of exactly what it is. Like, a lot of artists have gotten inspiration from some unknown whatever other artist or so, and never tell. and then they might even have had more success with it than the original person who painted this or came up with a certain concept. So it's, I don't know, art is not like science where you have to cite all your sources.
Everything in art is inspired by something else. Everything's a remix, we always say, and everything you're doing is inspired by a vast number of other things that you've seen, directly or indirectly. So there's already a lot of that exists. This just kind of like puts a very crass fine point on it.
But I could totally imagine like a end point of these tools being sort of images that can live in like a Pinterest or like a mood board space that are already sort of doing like a subdividing and averaging of original ideas. Because I think that's the other thing that feels so like prevalent regardless of these tools, is this like move towards like, oh, there's like these 5 sick things that exist. Like every deck and every pitch will just be like a rearrangement of these until like all the references are just like somehow a running average of these other sorts of like typologies. And I guess like the thing I've been going back and forth on is just in the deck context land, is it actually kind of better to have an abstraction of an artist's proposal or like thoughts in a deck, or to just like literally drag and drop off their website with like no credit into a deck? You know what I mean?
We have to start thinking about, I think, art not as something that we create, but as something that we explore. We explore works that are already there potentially, and just choosing to excavate and reveal some of them. So I think that's the things that made some people believe that it would be unthinkable for a machine to be creative, because effectively the machine doesn't create; it combines, it assembles. And I think that if we take a step back and realize that assembling and combining is all we've been doing throughout human history, especially in the field of art, I think it becomes a lot less, a lot clearer in a way.
Photography comes up a lot because there is this debate around, is the artist actually the artist, or is it just the tool that's like doing all the work to create the thing? And I think, that analogy seems very appropriate in this moment, because you go back in time and look at what people were saying about cameras, and it's like, oh well, they're not artists, they're just like, it's just the camera that's doing all the work. And I think most people anyway have kind of come around to the belief that no, like photographers still are doing something, there's still an artist involved there.
There's always the question now, when everybody is moving in the same space and stepping on their toes, what is it that you claim is yours?
I do feel like there is kind of like an instigator curatorial aspect to it. So like in that sense, like definitely feels like something of mine.
I don't know if it's the speed with which Midjourney, cranks things out that just makes it feel like less officially my work, or if it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just like masochistic and I like to take a long time and struggle to get something that looks good. But I don't know, I just feel like I have more ownership over the things I do and just go diffusion for whatever reason.
So I've been adding things on in Photoshop and changing things around a bit. So when you start doing that, you kind of feel like you've got a bit more ownership over it. The prompt is the sort of magic trick, isn't it? Is the thing that you don't really want people to, well, I don't know, maybe you don't want people to know about. I don't know how don't know how it's all going to work.
Regarding prompt sharing, like there was a time where I would always post all of my prompts like verbatim, just like because I felt like it was fun and like interesting. And I think there's something to be said about like art being in the prompt as well as the image. Like there's this idea of like there are visual artists who use text guided art, and then there are poets who use it, and then there are people who try to straddle that. And sometimes the prompt is like ugly. Like some people will be like, okay, 3D James Gurney. There's like this one thing where it's like Unity engine or like Unreal Engine that people append to it, and like I don't think that's very artful, but some people are much more interested in the image.
I wish it could get somehow like baked in, or even just seeing them with the prompt. Like, I don't know, I'm so much less interested in the images I see on Twitter without context, because honestly, like, they don't really look that different than the other sort of like visual noise that I'm like, okay, I scroll past. But every now and then I'll see one, especially on the Discord, and I'll like, we'll like laugh out loud at the prompt.
There's something to be said about having complete control over the output of what you make. I also think that there's something to be said about kind of collaborating with this kind of alien, like otherworldly, some people call it like a collective unconsciousness or collective consciousness or whatever.
It's something that is maybe the core prospect of our existence. We're born of a combination of genes, which are themselves a combination of atoms, which is basically space dust. And work of art, like anything we do, from politics to any cultural aspect, really, are born of combinations which evolve over time. And it's hard to, in that whole tangle of interaction and causality, to really put a flag there and say, oh, that segment is mine, even though it's completely true. Without you, maybe things wouldn't have inflected in some way. But yeah, that's a field of possibilities. It exists without you, and it's still gonna exist whether you contribute to it or not. Or it's beyond.